Which Oklahoma Sooners need to have a big winter and spring?
You are Locked On Sooners, your daily podcast on the Oklahoma Sooners. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, Sooner Nation? Welcome to Locked On Sooners, and thank you for making Locked On Sooners your first listen every single day. Shout out to all the everydayers out there for tuning in and subscribing to the show. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase over at Game Time. He's Jay Smith. I'm John Williams. Winter workouts are ongoing for the Oklahoma Sooners as they prepare for the 2025 college football season. So, Jay, we're going to ask this question for both sides of the football, but which player on offense needs to have the best winter workout spring ball season?
Man, the crazy thing is that if we really think about the offensive side of the ball, it really needs to have a big one. But if you want to narrow it down to specific players, I'm going to be honest, John Mateer needs to have a huge one because we haven't had truly competent quarterback play in a bit. Nothing against, Michael Hawkins or even Jackson all the time, but it hasn't been fluid. So Ben Arbuckle's got some work to do when it comes to this offense in order to show us that we've got something that can actually handle the SEC and something that can play complementary ball to what we're getting out of the defense, which finished in the top 10 as far as efficiency. But to me, John Mateer needs to be able to have a big spring and show us big winter workout as well as spring and show us that he is the leader that we've been looking for in order to get us back on the right track on the offensive side of the ball.
Yeah, there's probably no more important player to the team than John Mateer. Not just for what he does in the workouts or in spring practice, but what he's able to do off the field, outside of practice, away from the coaching staff. When he gets the guys together and helps them break down Ben Arbuckle's offense and helps teach them the nuances, there might be no more important player than what John Mateer is. And I mean, generally that's true of the quarterback. I think it's especially true for this team for 2025, because as we talked about on yesterday's show, it's a make or break year for Brent Venables. You got to go and show something. You've got to be a playoff contender when you get to November. And John Mateer is going to be instrumental in that. Offensively, for me, I'm going with the offensive line. And in particular, I'm going with the guard spots. Heath, Ozaeta, Febechi, Nwaiwu, your two guys that are incumbent starters coming back, they've got to be much improved, I think, going into 2025, because you've got a guy like Eddie Pierre-Louis that's breathing down your neck. And you've got some young offensive linemen, interior offensive linemen in particular, that are going to be trying to take spots. Jacob Sexton is going to be back. A lot of people are penciling him in as one of your guards. If that does happen, I mean, that's possible. We saw him playing some guard to start the 2024 season. I think if you want to hold on to your starting spot, if you're Heath, Ozaeta or Febechi Nwaiwu, you've got to have a great winter workout. You got to add strength, functional strength and quickness so that you can be more impactful along the offensive line. And then you got to go and have a good spring season. You've got to go up against this really, really stout interior defensive line group for Oklahoma, and you've got to show out. It's not going to get much easier or much tougher, I should say, than playing against Oklahoma's defensive tackle group. And if you can show out in practice against that group, that should provide some positive reinforcement and some positive signs for what this thing can be in 2025.
Yeah, you point that out perfectly, that Eddie Pierre-Louis is breathing down the neck of a Febechi Nwaiwu as well as a Heath Ozaeta. You don't know if he's going to walk in and try to take one of those positions because he was a highly rated interior offensive lineman. I think Rivals had him as a top 3 interior offensive lineman on their rankings. And so we know that he's thought of very highly around the country when it comes to as a recruit. So because of that, you knew that he was going to come in here and cause some problems. And the times that you did see him on the field looked pretty solid. So you need Heath Ozaeta to be able to show that he's refined himself. He's gotten better, stronger, more nasty. And, I got to give props to his mom. She points out, look, he ain't got facial hair yet. We've got to get him to facial hair so that he can get really, really nasty on the field. And look, if he can get that facial hair growing and he gets nasty, look, I want to be terrified when I look at that man's face. I need him to go out there and start putting the death stare on the opposition and push them around, because we've seen them have those moments where they've pushed teams around. Same thing with like a Logan Howland. You know, there's chances he's probably going to have to get in and rotate around depending on how the Jakes play. He's going to have a big winter and show us that he is physically in the ready to take over if he has to.
Yeah, one final note on Eddie Pierre-Louis. Brent Venables mentioned that had he come in during the winter of the 2024 season,
it's true,
might have played a lot earlier. And so I think that bodes well for his progression and his potential projection to be a significant piece of the offensive line in 2025. So for those other interior offensive line guys, you got to go show out. Like there's no guarantees for anybody on offense aside from John Matier, in my mind. Maybe even maybe a Deion Burks. I think everything else is up for grabs. Every other position is going to be a battle during the winter, during the spring, and you got to go fight for your job. You want a job? Go win a job. On defense, Jay, who are you looking at that needs to have a big offseason?
PJ Adebaware, 5-star plus coming in. He's dealt with a lot of with ankle injuries, a foot injury. He's had a lot of stuff that's kind of held him back. And Teddy Lehman talked about him on the Oklahoma Breakdown earlier this week, and I totally agree with him. The one thing with him is he needs to be able to come out here and show us that he's a 5-star. I mean, we always knew that he was a freak when it comes to being athletic out there at his size and speed. But because of injuries, it slowed him down and hasn't allowed us to see his capabilities. We desperately need to see him come and show out, because you still got R. Mason Thomas, as well as you bring in a Marvin Jones Jr., who we know they're hungry. They want to do something. And Danny Okoye is breathing down the neck. As a true freshman, he was a little frustrated that he wasn't out there more. He's ready to play. And as a true freshman, I know they were able to calm him down, like, oh, look, man, you're a true freshman. You got 4 more years of play that you'll be ready to play. And now we're going to unleash you. If Danny goes out there and he balls, we could see PJ get pushed back in the rotation. I don't want to see that. I want to see this 5-star show us what he is. But man, he's going to have to prove himself quickly.
He's a great athlete. And he's got great length, great size. Now it just has to put it together. The injuries, they impact your development. We saw it with R. Mason Thomas. He wasn't able to get on the field, wasn't able to really truly develop, had a full offseason where he was healthy in 2024, and then broke out in a big way in year 3 with the Oklahoma Sooners. This is year 3 for PJ Adebaware. Can he have a healthy offseason and develop his game and then go into 2025 healthy and ready to roll? I think that gives him an opportunity to break out. For me on defense, I'm saying Kobe McKinzie. For a lot of the same reasons you said about John Matier. You need a leader on the defense. He's taken over for Danny Stutzman at the Mike linebacker position. And this is another blue chip player. He was a 4-star coming out of high school. If you don't remember his recruiting saga, after Lincoln Riley left, Kobe McKinzie flipped briefly to Texas before flipping back to Oklahoma after Brent Venables was hired. This is a guy that, I mean, you need him to go have a big season, not just from a production standpoint, but a leadership standpoint. He's going to be the guy that a lot of the guys are looking to on defense, because when you're that Mike linebacker, you're the quarterback of the defense, and a lot of people are going to be looking to you. So I think if he can go and lead the way in the workouts, lead by example, it'll allow him to be the vocal leader that he needs to be when it comes to getting on the practice field and then obviously getting into games. But I think he's got good size, good athleticism, good strength. I think he's going to be a physical player for Oklahoma, and we've seen that he can be a factor in coverage as well. So I'm excited about Kobe McKinzie in 2025, and I think he's going to have an impactful season for the Sooners. Defense, Oklahoma gets a crystal ball for an interior offensive lineman out of Texas. We'll discuss him coming up next here on Locked On Sooners. Attending NFL games is an experience like no other. The energy, the excitement, and the connection with other fans is unmatched. I remember the thrill of seeing my favorite team clinch a playoff win live. It's a memory I'll never forget. Again, those Dallas Cowboys playoff wins, they're few and far between, so I'll remember every single one of them. This year, Game Time makes it even easier to create those unforgettable moments. With their new feature, Game Time Picks, it filters out the fluff and shows you only the best deals on great seats, so you can focus on what matters most, being there. I used Game Time Picks to grab tickets for an upcoming playoff game, and I couldn't have been easier. I found a super deal that gave me incredible value for amazing seats, and I could even preview the view from my spot before buying. The all-in pricing is a game changer. Toggle that feature on inside the app, and you get no surprise fees at checkout if you toggle in that all-in pricing. Plus, knowing my tickets are backed by the Game Time guarantee gave me complete peace of mind. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last-minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. Thanks for making Locked On Sooners your first listen every single day. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Jay, the Oklahoma Sooners got a crystal ball for Noah Best, an interior offensive lineman out of Midlothian, Texas, part of the 2026 recruiting class. He's currently ranked by 247 Sports as the number 22 interior offensive lineman and the number 44 player out of Texas.
Midlothian. That's a city that, if you know, you know. And he's got a nice size, 6'3", 200 and about 90 pounds, 6'4", 6'3", depending on the rating site. And I've been hearing a lot about Noah Best for like the last few months, that he's one player that Oklahoma has a really good chance of landing, and he's one that Oklahoma definitely want to get their hands on. But he's big, 6'3", 6'4", 290 pounds. Today he's going to be well over 300 pounds by the time he hits campus easily, or at least by the time he hits the field. And got to start shaping up this 26 class. And so that's one blocker that I know that our quarterback right now, commit Jaden O'Neal, would love to get his hands on, to have in front of him to protect him, because he has been doing a really good job of recruiting a lot of his peers to come here for this team. He wants to put together an all-star team that's going to be dominant. And I think Noah Best can add to that. I mean, he is a, roughly 3-4 star, top 400 player, which is all that matters. But he could be one of those diamond in the roughs that the Sooners can leverage to come out there and really make the magic happen.
Well, also you see this is a kid that plays offensive tackle for Midlothian, and they're projecting him as an interior offensive lineman. I think that can sometimes affect a rating system. But you look at what he's able to do. If you go watch the huddle highlights, he moves really, really well. He's a guy that you can pull into space. You can let him block in space. He's a physical player. He's not just looking to block guys. He's trying to punish them, put them in the ground, and lay on top of them and rub their face in the dirt as he does it. So an intriguing prospect. You've already got one interior offensive lineman committed in Will Conroy, who has transferred to IMG for his senior season. And then if you can get Noah Best, that gives you two really good interior offensive line prospects for the 2026 cycle. But I like this guy. I like the ability to play inside and out. He's going to be one of those dudes that, okay, maybe you start him off at guard, kind of like a Heath Ozaeta, but if you need him to, you could potentially flex him out to offensive tackle. Heath Ozaeta, you remember back in his high school days, he played offensive tackle as well. And then they flexed him inside as a guard. But in the future, if they need him to, Heath Ozaeta could be one of those dudes that bounces outside the tackle in a pinch. So again, it's another position, another guy with position flexibility in Noah Best. And coming out of Midlothian, out of Texas high school football, this is a tough dude. Like, that is not a gimmicky, skill-based, part of the Texas high school football season. No, these are tough kids playing out of Midlothian High School.
Yeah, you gotta get in the trenches to get in the dirt and play at a school like Midlothian. And the good thing is, when you look at his offer sheet, John, still pretty solid. It's got SMU, of course, one of the local schools there in the state. And SMU is up and coming very, very fast, especially in the ACC. But he's got Texas A&M, LSU, Texas, Arkansas, Nebraska, Wisconsin, schools that are known for getting really good interior offensive linemen. Missouri, Ole Miss, Tech, TCU, Houston, Arkansas. He's got a very good offer sheet for where he is ranked. And usually the offer sheet tells you that how good a player can possibly be. It means that his ceiling is really high, because if all of these schools are after him, ain't none of these offers on this list, I promise you, are just offers just for the heck of it. They're not offering a 3-star like this that's not going to be committable. They're offering it up to say, hey, look, we would like for you to commit to school because you have a high enough ceiling to play at this level. And there's a lot of SEC schools in there. So he's one of those kids that could walk in there and be a problem for the opposition. I like what Noah Best, I like his tools. As you mentioned, one of the big things about him too is watching him be able to pull and move. he can move well for his size, and he doesn't look like he's almost 300 pounds. He's got a nice frame. You add some more to that, get him nice and strong, which he's probably already country strong as it is. You got a really good shot going forward.
Yeah, and I think you could probably get him up to 320 without really impacting his ability to move. He does really good in pass pro. I like the way he's able to mirror defenders and then just locks them up. As soon as he gets his hands on them, they don't go anywhere. They don't get around him. They can't get inside him. He's really strong. And then also I like the footwork that I saw out of him. He has a really good drop step and is able to just quickly get out into his spot and beat defenders to the spot and cut off their ability to get to the quarterback. So a lot of really nice tools in the tool belt for Noah Best. Again, he's going to have to develop just like all these offensive line guys. There's a big jump going from playing Texas high school football to the NFL, to the SEC is a big jump, but listen,
feels like an NFL.
And Bill Beatonbow is going to be able to develop him. So it's just a matter of getting to campus, getting healthy, staying healthy, building up that strength, building up that weight, and moving up. So this is where Oklahoma's at right now. Everything is trending on the offensive side of the ball, which is really intriguing. We're starting to see a little bit of movement on defense. We did get a crystal ball earlier, or I guess a Rivals Future cast earlier this week for a defensive end, Kevin Ford Jr. Oklahoma has been meeting with defenders across the country during these visit weeks, but you're seeing a lot of movement on the offensive side. So it seems like guys are really bought into what Ben Arbuckle's trying to do as well.
Yeah, the Ben Arbuckle component is probably what's key to me, and I think that's what's the thing that's the most intriguing is that he's starting to, as he's getting out there in the field and meeting people, I've noticed him. I've noticed some of the offensive staff out there, recruiting offensive linemen with Bill Beatonbow. And I mean, we've got pictures of Noah Best with Bill Beatonbow, so I know that that's one player that he definitely wants. But Ben Arbuckle's been out there talking and, seeing people that potentially he would like to be in his offense, and that's pretty good, right? I mean, especially if they can work in lockstep like they are from a Bill Beatonbow to a Ben Arbuckle. Yeah, that gets me pretty excited to see that they have already shown some, continuity or just some collaboration is probably the best way to say it. They're looking like they're working together and they're trying to build something that's going to be special. So, hey, I'll take it any day of the week, especially because Ben Arbuckle's been doing some West Coast recruiting. I mean, him coming from Washington State, he's had some relationships out there in the West that he's starting to build, and we're starting to see that he's getting some of those players. He's starting to go out there and see them. He's starting to, take the pictures and get the posts, make the offers. So I think him and Bill Beatonbow appear to be in lockstep on the type of players that's needed in order to be successful, and I'm pretty excited about that.
Yeah, it's going to be fun to see how this class turns out. But Oklahoma's not going to be done in the portal. What are they going to do in the spring portal season? Where do they need to focus their attention? We'll discuss coming up next here on Locked On Sooners. Once again, thanks for making Locked On Sooners your first listen every single day. Shout out to all the everydayers out there, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Jay, what is Oklahoma's focus need to be when they get to spring portal season?
Yeah, we're pretty early on it, but I think that's something to kind of start talking about as we're starting to really look at the roster. We're trying to get an understanding of the landscape and the way that the roster is going to be, the way that's going to be built going forward. And now that winter workouts are happening and players are getting like cleanup surgeries and everything in preparation, to me, you probably want to get yourself one more veteran corner. I think that's one piece that would make the most sense to go after in the transfer portal. You've got Eli Bowen out there at corner. You got Jacoby Johnson. We talked about him yesterday, and he's young, but he still has some refining to do. So you want to probably get yourself one more veteran corner because you've got a lot of young guys, Malik Hawkins as well as Cortland Guillory, who we are very much excited about. But if you add one more veteran corner, it's someone that can come in and potentially play that's had enough snaps to make you feel very comfortable about them playing. Adding somewhere there, I think that's probably the number one spot, and then a young linebacker, because that linebacker room is starting to get a little thin. You lost Phil Pachotti as well as Lewis Carter. You probably want to make sure you add one more in there just so that you can start building up for the next season.
Yeah, I think if you were to get a guy that was a redshirt freshman at some point or a sophomore, I think that would definitely benefit your linebacker room. Corner, I think, is going to be the obvious need. all spring, because as much as we like Eli Bowen, you still have a lot of developmental work that needs to be done. And he did show some susceptibility to the deep ball when he got put in one-on-one situations by Zach Alley, put on the island, got beat a few times there towards the end of the season. Ryan Williams almost had an incredible catch. Actually did have an incredible catch in the end zone. It was waved off due to a penalty. That dude's just incredible. So that's going to happen. You're going to get beat sometimes at cornerback. I don't think it fully tells the tale of who Eli Bowen's going to be. I think he's a very promising young player. You just want to have some veteran insurance at the position, because you don't really have that right now. You've got guys that you like that are young and have a lot of potential, but if you start having injuries, much like you saw at different positions, like at Cheetah, you went from Kendall Dolby to Samuel Omasigo, and you like the potential out of Samuel Omasigo, but what if he got hurt? Then what do you do after that? I mean, you're starting to get into your 3 deep. Same thing we saw at wide receiver. You went from guys you really, really liked to guys that, okay, they're on our 2 deep. Now we're at our 3 deep and 4 deep at times at wide receiver, and you didn't feel as confident with what you had on the field. The same could be said at cornerback. If you go from Eli Bowen and then you're going to a guy that for the most part redshirted or didn't really play a whole lot in 2024, like a Jeremiah Newcomb, or you're going to a true freshman, maybe you don't feel super confident about that. But you've got guys that you might be able to see make plays in a Tristan Haynes or Malik Hawkins, Cortland Guillory, or Jeremiah Newcomb. It's a young and promising group at corner. It's just there's not a lot of experience there beyond Eli Bowen. Gentry Williams is great, but he's been on the shelf for a year. Yeah. Where does he come back? What's the rust going to look like for him? That's going to be something that has to be in play. So getting a veteran cornerback, I think, makes a lot of sense. Offensively, I just don't know if you go anywhere in particular. I know a lot of people are going to talk tight end. I just don't think that tight end is going to be one of those positions that they're going to use a whole lot. We've talked about it on previous episodes that Washington State just didn't use the tight end very much. They played around 330 snaps each of the last 2 years. Well, you look at Oklahoma's tight end usage over the last 2 years, those guys were averaging over 700 snaps in a season between Austin Stogner and Bauer Sharp. I don't think Ben Arbuckle is going to necessarily force a tight end on the field just to say, hey, we got a tight end on the field. Yeah. If the tight end is one of their best 4 or 5 pass catchers, then sure, by all means, they'll put one out there. Like if a Caden Helms stays healthy, develops and emerges, or Devon Mitchell, if he starts to really figure it out this offseason and forces his way onto the field, you'll see a tight end on the field. But I don't think they're just going to have a tight end out there just to have a tight end out there. I think they're going to make sure it makes sense for the offense.
Yeah, and you make a great point. If you look at the incumbents from a Caden Helms, a Cade McIntyre, as well as a Devon Mitchell. I mean, you've got 3 guys that are pretty solid. And heck, at one point, Devon Mitchell was a 5-star, going in the 25 class. So this is technically the class that he would be in, where he would actually be, coming to the school. So you've got some guys that have the talent. You just need them to go out there and show it. And I think Cade McIntyre as well as Caden Helms are probably about that point. They've been dealing with injuries too. That's really the biggest issue you've run into when it comes to the tight end spot. So to me, going into the portal kind of doesn't make sense, especially since you added 3 guys that you got bodies. You'll be fine. The question's going to be, to me, what the wide receiver looks like, what Jaden Gibson looks like coming off of that knee injury. I don't expect him to be great day one, but I think in time we may get back to the old Jaden Gibson. So you may look at one more wide receiver just to help out with that. But on the offensive side, unless you deal with, knock on wood, an injury on the offensive line, you probably don't really go for one. It's going to be the focus to me. It's going to be defensive corners. You want to get a corner, get a linebacker. You may add one more defensive lineman that's young just so that you have additional rotational pieces, but not really much you really want to go after.
Well, and with Jaden Jackson kind of having a cleanup shoulder surgery, probably just a scope just after the season, you may want a defensive tackle in to have as part of your spring rotation or your fall camp rotation. I expect he'll be back and ready to go, especially for the fall, but you can never have enough defensive tackles, especially in the SEC. You got to have bodies that you can run out there in rotations to keep fresh and keep the pressure on opposing offensive linemen. So I think, listen, I'm not going to sit here and say that the roster is ready to go contend for a national title. unless there is a frontline, no doubter, top 50 pick at wide receiver, I don't think you need to add another wide receiver necessarily. I think you've got good depth. But if a guy like an Evan Stewart showed up in the transfer portal again in the spring, I'd be like, yeah, take a run at him. Go see if you can add him to your wide receiver core and really bolster your offense. But if it's just another guy, I mean, you've got a lot of guys that right now look like just another guy. You've got to give them opportunities to develop. You got to give them snaps with the first team offense to see who's going to be the guys that emerge. You add another body and another name into the mix, and it just waters down the snaps for guys like Giovanni Gibson and Keontez Lewis, Isaiah Satania, Josiah
Martin. Yeah.
Martin. I wanted to say Josiah Martin, but I almost said Josiah Thompson or something. I don't know where it came from. But then, Ivan Carrion and Zion Kearney and Zion Reagans, and Elijah Thomas and Emmanuel Choice. Like, you've got a lot of guys that have a lot of promise and a lot of potential. You got to keep them with your quarterback, and you got to let them run and see if they can be the guys that are going to be leading your team. And if you get through spring ball and nobody emerges alongside Deion Burks at wide receiver, then maybe you dip back into the portal. But right now, as things look, man, I want to see what these guys can do. I want to see how they develop. And if Emmett Jones can find 3-4 guys that can really hone in and be big time playmakers for this offense.
Yeah, me running around with a player like a Zion Kearney, who was a top 100 player in the country. He was one of the top wide receivers in the 24 class. Mm-hmm. It's time to get that out of him. Now, he dealt with a little bit of injuries at the end of the season, ankle injury. He was a true freshman trying to go out there and figure it out with no other veteran leadership to be able to help him take some of the pressure off his back. That's not easy for true freshmen. I kind of talked about this before, even on here as well as even on my channel over Unfair Sports, that you got to understand that it's easy for a Jeremiah Smith and a Ryan Williams, being as talented as they are, to still be able to shine because there's still other players that teams have to focus on. Like, they've got to worry about Emeka Ibuka. You've got to worry about other wide receivers like Kendrick Law over there at, they had a few players over there at Alabama you had to actually pay attention to outside of Ryan Williams. So it allowed for him to just go out there and do his own thing, and he's able to find his own home. At a certain point, when Zion Kearney became kind of the focal point, he had to figure out how to not only make space, but also be a playmaker. And it's not the easiest thing to do as a true freshman. So now we'll have a Deion Burks back. Thank goodness, it looks like. So for him, we should be good. I don't think, like I said, I don't believe, actually on offense, I don't really know if there's anyone we truly need. Troy Everett's back. So you got your center. Got Owen Holland back out of the class, as well as Josh Iasosa, who can play not only center, but also a guard. He's a big boy. Out of Edmond Santa Fe, he's got the capabilities to go out there and push people around. So you should be good in that capacity. The question is going to be on the defensive side, where that additional depth is going to come from, because like you said, you're going to start getting thin. So, John, that's a great point to point out. Linebackers, you're going to start getting thin at a certain point. You need to start paying attention to that spot. But to me, corner, even though you got young guys that probably are hungry to play, Cortland Guillory as well as a Malik Hawkins, which I think he's going to be one player that's going to shock a lot of people. I think he's going to be as scrappy as his dad was, Michael Hawkins Sr. out there. But as long as you add like maybe one more veteran just to help, and then a young linebacker, I think you're good when it comes to the spring portal. Unless, like you said, a huge name pops in there and you just got to go after him.
Yeah, if it ends up being something like a Dominic Williams was this last spring portal season,
I'll take 2.
Take a run. Make a run at somebody. Go see if you can make a splash. Otherwise, don't just add another body, because you've got a lot of guys that you got to figure out if they can play for you or not. And that's going to do it for today's episode of Locked On Sooners. Thanks so much for tuning in, being a part of the show. Subscribe to the show wherever you get your podcasts. We're free and available on all podcast platforms and on YouTube. So hit that subscribe button and that notification bell to let you know when new episodes drop. Follow Jay at Unfair Sports. Go check out his channel, Unfair Sports, over on YouTube. You can follow me at John9Williams. You can read my work covering the Sooners over at SoonersWire.com. The show is at Locked On Sooners on all of your favorite social media platforms. But until next time, he's Jay Smith. I'm John Williams. Boomer
Sooner. Waka waka.